How in the span of just over a month did the 2020 Steelers go from this
A chance to go undefeated. They're still alive.
to this?
Wow.
Only 12 other teams in NFL history have started an NFL season going 11-0. So how did the Steelers fall so far, and how did they even get there in the first place? In 2020, the Steelers were coming off of a season where they had absolutely zero offense, failing to score 28 or more points without starting QB Big Ben Roethlisberger. The rushing game was straight up bad, and the passing game was even worse, with an ongoing QB battle of Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph going on throughout the season. But the elite defense kept them winning games, finishing the year 8-8, barely missing out on the playoffs. And with Big Ben coming back in 2020, people expected really that same result. They were slated to be good, not great, with the second best odds to win the AFC North, tied for 5th best odds to win the AFC, and the 11th best odds to win the Super Bowl. People did not expect much from Big Ben in a year which many expected to be his final season, coming off of a season-ending elbow injury. But many people could and would be shocked by the run that the Steelers would go on. The Pittsburgh Steelers would start the 2020 season off 3-0 with a Week 1 Monday Night Football win over the New York Giants in Big Ben's first game back. Then in Week 2, they would eke by the Drew Lock-less Broncos, as the Steelers would allow 19 second half points, but the Broncos comeback was not enough. Steelers definitely a sketchy Week 2 win, but then they would turn around in Week 3 and shut out Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans during the second half in order to win. In Week 4, the Steelers were up 31-14 early in the third quarter. In a matter of one quarter, the score was 31-29. This Week 4 game versus the Philadelphia Eagles was definitely a sketchy showing that was in similar vein to the Week 2 Broncos win, where the Steelers would almost blow a lead, but they would hold on to win and keep the undefeated streak alive. In this Week 4 game, we saw Chase Claypool have an absolute monstrous 4-touchdown showing that would really kick off his rookie campaign. Starting off the year 4-0, Week 5, going into Cleveland, the Browns were 4-1, and well, the Steelers would dominate the Browns 38-7. It was pretty great to see little brother, aka Cleveland, always being put in its place no matter the stage or how much talent that team may get. Hopefully that comment does not come back to bite me in the ass. That was weird. Anyway, another big time game, the undefeated Titans, who ran away from us and stole our bye week, could not run any longer. Oh yeah, by the way, just a few weeks back, the original Week 4 game was supposed to be versus Tennessee, but then Tennessee had a COVID outbreak once again. Obviously, this was the COVID year, and for that week on that Thursday, the Steelers' schedule got reworked. So, well, we essentially did not have a bye week. It was time, though. Two undefeated heavyweights, Pittsburgh Steelers, Tennessee Titans. How would this play out? Well, the Steelers started out big, going up 27-7 during the third quarter. Pure domination against an absolute phony team in back-to-back weeks. But then, very similar to Week 2 against the Broncos and Week 5 against the Eagles, something was happening. The Steelers tried their literal hardest to give the game away. The Steelers would still go on to win 27-24, but this game had no business being close. 3 out of the 6 games, the Steelers came very close to giving it away. Interesting. But fuck it, the Steelers were undefeated. I do not care how you do it. 6-0 is 6-0. Here we go. Week 7 versus Baltimore. Always a huge rival and a tough battle, and it started that way. A quick Robert Spillane pick 6 would open the game up, But then the Steelers offense could not do a damn thing. 1 fumble and 3 punts during their first 4 drives, and then none of those drives would reach over 7 yards. Pittsburgh was down 17-7 going into the half, and in a very dramatic second half, going down to the last play, the Steelers would end up winning 28-24, outscoring the Baltimore Ravens 21-7 in the second half, as the Steelers were able to extend their winning streak to 7 games and make it out of a very tough 3-game stretch, being the 4-1 little brother Cleveland Browns, undefeated Tennessee Titans, and obviously the Baltimore Ravens. And this Ravens game was massive for me, who was a fan watching this season, because the Steelers almost blew 3 games. Tennessee Titans, they almost blew it. Philadelphia Eagles almost blew it. Denver Broncos, they almost blew it. They had the big lead at half, and then they would allow the other team back into the game. This game versus the Ravens proved to me that the Steelers could come back from a deficit. The Steelers could come back despite any adversity during this 2020 season, and this Steelers team was built for something special. Unfortunately, though, the Steelers during the Baltimore Ravens game would lose then budding linebacker star Devin Bush to a season-ending injury. That would be a massive blow to the Steelers defense, but Robert Spillane was coming off of a big day, and hopefully he could fill in that Devin Bush hole as much as possible. And the Steelers would turn around the next week, looking forward to week 9, with seemingly an absolute layup. And in this absolute layup of a game versus the Dallas Cowboys, where they would start Garrett Gilbert. Wait. Going into the fourth quarter, the Steelers were down 19-9 against Garrett fucking Gilbert. The Dak Prescott-less Dallas Cowboys were leading the Pittsburgh Steelers, undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers, going into the fourth quarter. Well, lucky enough, the Steelers would come back, score 15 second half points, including a game-winning touchdown to tight end Eric Ebron, and win the game. And something that was happening these last 2 weeks that worked against both the Ravens and Cowboys was that the Steelers were not doing any designed runs. If the Steelers wanted a short gain that would typically happen with a rush play, they would do a really weird 2 to 3 yard pass that defenses could not really stop because of the dynamic receiving core of Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool, who are all 3 having great seasons that could not possibly go wrong. And this style of play with an aging QB, 3 young receivers, a bad offensive line, and lacking an actual good rushing game was definitely becoming a trend, as it had worked. And the next 2 weeks, the Steelers would beat the Bengals and the Jaguars by a total of 50 points. Big win over Cincy because, it's the Bengals, right? We always kick the shit out of them. And, well, the Jags suck because, I mean, no one really cares about the Jaguars. This no rushing game, 2-yard pass plays, had become a trend that had worked. The Steelers sat at 10-0, coming off of 2 big wins by a total of 50 points, squeaking by the Dallas Cowboys during a comeback win, a 3-game stretch the 3 weeks before that where they played genuine tough opponents. The Steelers were 10-0. It was very impressive, but boy, were there questions. And the questions, a lot of people were calling this team overrated because it always had to be some gimmick for the Steelers to win. They always had to come back versus a bad team in the Garrett Gilbert-led Cowboys, or they would be blowing leads to the Eagles, the Drew Lock-less Broncos, or the Tennessee Titans during a game where the Steelers were trying to make a statement. A lot of people called this team overrated with a bad offense, and they were definitely proven right in the game that was slated for Thanksgiving against the Baltimore Ravens. And what I mean by slated for Thanksgiving was the Steelers-Ravens matchup. The Week 12 matchup was supposed to be the Thanksgiving night game, but then, well, a few days before that, it would get postponed to Sunday because of a Baltimore Ravens COVID outbreak. There was absolutely nothing the Steelers could do except wait for 4 total postponements to play the game against the Ravens B team squad on a Wednesday afternoon at 3:40 p.m. Yep, a game that was slated for Thanksgiving night, obviously a Thursday, was pushed back a whole 6 days to play on Wednesday afternoon in the NFL's first ever Wednesday afternoon football, aka the WAF. And this was potentially the worst football game I had ever seen in my entire life. Because when you looked at this game, all in the first quarter, there was an RG3 fumble, a Big Ben 4th and goal at the 1 interception, a pick 6 on RG3, and then the very next drive, the Steelers would muff a punt. The final score after the first quarter sitting at 7-6, Ravens up because the Steelers did miss a PAT. Absolutely disgusting. 4 turnovers in 1 quarter. Everybody expected the Ravens to be bad. They had 16 players on the COVID list, and 7 of those players were Pro Bowlers. People were not very surprised to see that RG3 was not living up to the Lamar Jackson standard because no one expected him to. People did expect the Steelers to live up to a 10-0 standard, and they were living up to an 0-10 standard. Now, throughout the second quarter, they would get 2 field goals, making the score at halftime looking like 12-7, Steelers up, and that would finally change after a scoreless third quarter early in the fourth with a Juju Smith-Schuster 1-yard touchdown, 19-7. Finally, this game can be over with. Let's just get it done with. But that's when Trace McSorley came to play, and this was during the Trace McSorley meme too. This dude came in, and within plays, 70-yard bomb to Marquise Brown, touchdown, score is 19-14. This game's not over because of a blown coverage and Trace McSorley being better than Joe Montana. But very thankfully for the Steelers, the score would stay 19-14. This game was finally over. Wednesday afternoon football. The worst first quarter of football I had seen up until that point, until the wild card game. It was absolutely disgusting, and it just proved to me further that no matter the situation, the day, how many players are out or hurt, the Steelers versus Ravens will always be a close game, and thank God the Steelers came away with a win in this disgusting matchup. The league would push the following week's Steelers vs. Washington football team game to Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock because obviously the Steelers had really no time to play, and if I must remind people, the Steelers had no bye week this season, so it was really a shitty situation. Now, let's just go ahead and get to kickoff in the Monday afternoon game. Washington just had a good mini bye week after dominating the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, but at the end of the day, this is an 11-0 team playing a 4-7 team that is in the joke of the 2020 NFC East. Well then, shit would hit the fan for the Pittsburgh Steelers, showing all the bad qualities they had shown during their blown leads and their Wednesday afternoon game. The Steelers' offense would have 14 rushes for 21 yards and 6 dropped passes. The offense was the problem, but the Steelers were still leading. But early in the second half, we would see Robert Spillane go down with a season-ending injury, and this was to a linebacker core that was already missing Devin Bush for the season, and literally just the week before that in the Baltimore Ravens game, Bud Dupree did go down with a non-contact ACL tear, so he was already out for the season. This linebacking core was absolutely on its final legs. The significance of these injuries was obviously Bud Dupree was a fantastic counterpart to TJ Watt, and they were one of the best 1-2 combos in the NFL at pass rush. Well, the other one in Robert Spillane, which is a name that most football fans do not know of, was that he was the only guy who could cover Washington's running back, J.D. McKissic. And Washington knew that. He was a very good receiving back, and he was used every play. 10 targets for 10 catches, 70 yards, and 55 yards after the catch. J.D. McKissic would dominate. He was an instrumental part of 2 of Washington's scoring drives, and obviously not having Bud Dupree in the game allowed Washington's offensive line to focus on TJ Watt more and nerf Pittsburgh's pass rush. With 2 minutes left, Washington up by 3. First play of the drive, can Big Ben pull another game-winning drive out of his ass? And can the undefeated Steelers pull another win out of their ass? No. Big Ben threw the ball, it was batted up, and ball game. The undefeated Steelers fell to the no-name Washington football team, and it instantly became the joke of the NFL on Twitter, Instagram, MySpace. It didn't matter. Any corner of the world, this was the joke of the league. But hey, the Steelers having no bye week, suffering some major defensive injuries, and 2 games in 6 games. And honestly, they were playing a fantastic Washington defense that season. The Steelers were facing some problems that were out of their control. Hopefully, there will be a bounce-back game soon. So, who's next?
Will Allen beat them deep or a screen pass or something? Get Pittsburgh's pressure. Here's Allen throwing, man down. Diggs got it inside the 10. Diggs to the goal line. And
You gotta be shitting me. Alright, 2 straight embarrassing games. Now we got one of the best teams in the league on the road on primetime football. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. On the road, Pittsburgh's defense did well because it's the Steelers' defense. But the offense was once again terrible because it was the Steelers' offense in 2020. The Bills would win 26-25, admittedly nothing out of the ordinary. Pittsburgh started well, but then lost the game to a very worthy opponent as the Steelers would fall to 11-2. But something strange made headlines the next day involving one of Pittsburgh's stars. Bills safety Jordan Poyer talked about how Juju Smith-Schuster's pre-game TikTok dance on the Bills logo gave the Bills that extra motivation, saying, quote, "That turns you up a little bit, gets you a second itch to play with some extra fire." And Juju's dance became the meme amongst NFL fans, and his dances were hated amongst Steelers fans. Hoping that it would all just end was definitely not what happened. What the Steelers did not need was another primetime game, but that's exactly what the Steelers got. They were looking for a perfect bounce-back opportunity against the Ryan Finley-led Bengals, a Bengals team that the Steelers dominated, absolutely dominated earlier this year. It was incredible because the Bengals are the little brother with the Cleveland Browns, and the Steelers, although it has been an embarrassing 3 weeks, we're still 11-2, sitting at first in the division. Oh no. No way. No chance he did it again. Well, shit. We better win this one.
there's some pressure from the Bengals. Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster is...
Fuck. Well, I mean, that was just one play. Everyone gets got.
2nd and 2. Finley will keep it right up the middle. Ryan.
Yeah, this team is ass. Same old story, but humiliating this time because it was on Monday Night Football against Ryan Finley and a divisional rival in the Cincinnati Bengals. The Steelers might not win the division at this point, sitting at 11-3, and the final 2 games of the season being against the Colts and the Browns. This is fucking rough. Alright, let's just move to the Colts game. Yeah. Let's just get this shit over with. Oh, who would have thought? Indy is up 24-7 in the 3rd quarter. Who gives a shit? The team stinks. We're gonna get embarrassed again. Well, we actually came back to win. The Steelers would win this game. The rushing game was still not existent. A lot of questionable penalties were called on the Colts, but damn did the Steelers need this win after 4 embarrassing games in a row, the whole Juju fiasco. The Steelers definitely needed this win to be a playoff contender, all in the second half. The Steelers figured out how to play football again after a month of being like the NBA players that got their ability stolen in Space Jam. It feels good. The AFC North was locked up. Let's continue this momentum. The Steelers had the Browns in Week 17, and well, they decided to rest a lot of starters, which was questionable because the Steelers had just figured out how to play football again. It was definitely a decision that you can't really knock because the Steelers had no bye week, but on the other hand, considering the situation, the Steelers kind of needed to keep up their momentum, and the Steelers, led by Mason Rudolph, would give the Browns a run for the money, but at the end of the day, the Browns would end up eking by the Steelers B team. I think it's fair to say the Steelers are back, beating the Colts in Week 16. Browns Week 17, they barely beat our fucking B team. I think that month was just an absolute anomaly of the great season that it was, and the Steelers were slated to play the Browns wild card weekend, playing them the 3rd time this season, killed them 38-7 during the first matchup, and played a very close game with Mason Rudolph in the second matchup. Jesus Christ, Juju, what are you doing?
The Browns is the Browns.
You would think this dude had learned his damn lesson by this point. But all in all, I think the Steelers have got this, or at least the game will be competitive. And I think Juju is right. 38-7. 24-22 with Mason Rudolph in the game. At the end of the day, let's all just sit back and watch some good football. You gotta be shitting me.
The Browns is the Browns. The Browns is the Browns.
Yep, that's how the season ended. The most pathetic loss and the worst quarter of football I have ever seen. The Steelers almost climbed their way back, playing a great second and third quarter, but, at that point, there was no room for error, and Nick Chubb would break loose for a long touchdown. What a poetic way to end the season for Cleveland. What a disappointing, pathetic, dark, hellish way for the season to end in the utter collapse of the 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers.